She looked me in the eye and said, "Don't you dare show up at Mom's birthday." My own sister, the one who never lifted a finger but always wanted the credit. Her voice was sharp, smug, like she finally had the upper hand. And for a moment I almost laughed, because she had no idea. No idea that every string of lights draped across the backyard, every plate of food waiting to be served, every flower in those overstuffed vases had been paid for with my money. No idea that while she was scrolling Instagram and complaining about stress, I was signing the checks, booking the venue, negotiating with the caterer, making sure Mom's favorite cake was ordered weeks in advance. She thought her cruel words would wound me, that by telling me to stay away she could erase me. But all I could think was, how do you throw someone out of a party that wouldn't even exist without them? That's the kind of sister I had, entitled enough to try. And she was about to learn just how expensive her arrogance really was. I stood there frozen, not because her words cut me, but because the sheer audacity of them almost made me dizzy. This wasn't some casual get-together where she could pull rank as the older sister and play hostess. This was a milestone birthday for our mother, the woman who sacrificed everything for us when Dad walked out. Mom deserved one night of being celebrated, not just with balloons and cake, but with dignity, with people showing up for her in the way she always showed up for us. And the truth was, if I hadn't stepped in months ago, there wouldn't have been any celebration at all. My sister Amelia had announced to everyone in the family group chat that she would take care of everything. She loved the attention, the instant stream of heart emojis and "you're the best" replies. And for 2 weeks she lived in that fantasy, posting Pinterest boards and mood board collages about color palettes and cake designs. But when the deposit deadlines came, her credit card was maxed out. When the caterer demanded a 50% down payment, she stopped answering their calls. And when Mom asked gently how plans were coming along, Amelia's answer was always the same. "Oh, don't worry. I've got it under control." What she didn't say was that I was the one writing checks, behind the scenes. I was the one pulling cash out of my savings I'd been building for a trip I'd been dreaming about for years, to make sure no one disappointed Mom. I told myself it didn't matter who got the credit. What mattered was seeing the look on Mom's face when she walked in and realized her daughters hadn't forgotten her. I stayed quiet because I thought maybe, just maybe, Amelia would learn gratitude along the way. But when she cornered me 2 days before the party, her face twisted in that self-righteous smirk and told me I wasn't welcome at the event I had essentially built from the ground up. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the pattern. Amelia had always taken, and the family let her. She was the difficult one, the one Mom defended out of habit, the one who could storm into a room late and still be treated like royalty. And I was the fixer. The one who stayed late to clean up, who lent money just until next week, who was told I was so responsible, as if that made me less deserving of joy or recognition. But this time was different. This time, she had crossed a line so sharp and bright that even Mom would have to see it. Amelia thought she could humiliate me, keep the spotlight all to herself, and erase the truth. What she didn't realize was that the receipts, all the catering contracts, the floral invoices, the balance transfer slips, had my name printed across the top. She thought she was holding the stage, but I was holding the entire stage together with my own 2 hands. And soon, very soon, the curtain would drop. I didn't sleep the night she told me not to come. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, going over every detail I had covered for that party. The rented hall with its polished wooden floors and string lights. It was my signature on the contract. The caterer with the elaborate menu of Mom's favorite dishes. My bank account had been drained to make the down payment. The cake, custom-made with edible roses because Mom always said roses were her joy. That was ordered under my name and scheduled for pickup with my number as the contact. Every single thread of this event was tied back to me. And still, my sister, had the audacity to act like she was the queen pulling the strings, banning me from my own creation. I thought back to when we were little, how Amelia always grabbed the bigger half of anything we shared, how she would tell me I owed her because she was older. I used to believe it. I grew up believing I was always one step behind her, the one who should quietly pick up the slack so she could shine. Even as adults, she kept that grip tight. When her rent was late, she called me. When her boyfriend left her stranded, she called me. When she needed someone to watch her kids while she went out, she called me. And I answered every time. But not once did she ever acknowledge how much she leaned on me. She spun it into a story of her resilience, her independence, her hard work. And our mother, who wanted peace more than honesty, let her. Until now. Because Mom had been calling me too. She had asked me with worry in her voice whether Amelia was overwhelmed, whether things would fall through. And I had reassured her, like always, that everything was fine. I wanted it to be a surprise, to let Mom think Amelia really had pulled it off for once. But the more I thought about it that night, the more I realized Amelia wasn't just cutting me out. She was erasing me in front of our mother. She wanted Mom to believe this party, this perfect celebration, was her gift. She wanted me invisible. And that was a humiliation I could no longer allow. At dawn, I opened my laptop, pulled up every invoice, every email chain, every payment confirmation. I printed them out, neat as a stack of evidence in a trial. If Amelia wanted to play this game, then fine. I would let her walk straight into the spotlight she craved. But when the truth came out, she wouldn't be standing tall in it. She'd be exposed, raw, in front of everyone. I wasn't planning a scene. I wasn't going to storm in screaming or ruin Mom's night with chaos. No, my revenge was going to be quieter, sharper, the kind that leaves no room for denial. Amelia thought she had pushed me out of the picture, but the truth was, I was holding the frame, and soon the whole family was going to see exactly who had painted it. The morning of the party, I drove to the venue early. The decorators were already there, stringing the fairy lights and setting up the long banquet tables. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching as the room slowly transformed into something magical, something our mother deserved. The florist carried in bouquet after bouquet, filling the air with the sweet, heavy scent of roses and lilies. My chest tightened, because I knew Mom would walk in and gasp the way she always did when beauty caught her off guard. That moment was why I had done all of this. But as I signed the delivery slips and checked off each item against my list, I felt something colder stir inside me. Each paper had my name, my card number, my signature. Amelia hadn't done a thing but send Pinterest screenshots. And yet, in a few hours, she would sweep through those doors in a dress she couldn't afford, plaster a smile across her face, and accept every compliment as though it belonged to her. The thought burned. I went over to the staff setting up the sound system and gave them my card for the final installment. They handed me the receipt without question. Another piece of proof. Another nail in the coffin of her lies. I tucked it into the folder with the rest of the evidence. For once, I wasn't going to swallow the humiliation. Not this time. I left before Amelia arrived, but not before slipping a note to the event manager. Any questions or payments, contact me directly. That way, even if Amelia tried to take charge, they would know exactly who was in control. By the time I got home, my phone was buzzing with Amelia's texts. "Where are you? You didn't show up for the setup. Do you expect me to handle everything?" I stared at the screen, a bitter laugh escaping me. She was furious that I wasn't there to do the heavy lifting she could later take credit for. For the first time in years, I didn't answer. I let her stew in her own panic. Because tonight, when Mom blew out her candles surrounded by the people who loved her, Amelia's perfect illusion would shatter. And the best part? I wouldn't have to raise my voice. The truth would do the work. For me, when I finally arrived that evening, the parking lot was already full, and I could hear the hum of voices and laughter spilling out of the hall. I smoothed my dress, took a steadying breath, and walked in. The place was stunning. Every detail, exactly as I had envisioned when I started planning months ago. Guests were sipping wine, the buffet was beautifully arranged, and the string quartet played softly in the corner. And there, near the entrance, was Amelia. She was draped in sequins, glowing under the lights, smiling wide as people rushed to hug her and say, "You outdid yourself. This is incredible." My sister nodded graciously, like a queen accepting praise from her subjects. Her eyes caught mine across the room, and her smile faltered for just a second before she turned away, pretending not to see me. I almost laughed out loud. She had told me not to come, and yet here I was, walking into a party that existed because of me. I spotted Mom in the center of the crowd, radiant in a new dress, her cheeks flushed with happiness. When she saw me, her face lit up, and she pulled me into a hug so tight I could feel her heartbeat. "Oh, sweetheart, isn't this wonderful? Amelia worked so hard, I'm so proud of her," she whispered. And those words, stabbed me deeper than Amelia's ban. Because Mom truly believed it. She thought Amelia had done this for her. I forced a smile, kissed her cheek, and said softly, "Yes, it's beautiful, Mom. You deserve every bit of it." Inside, though, my resolve hardened. I wasn't going to ruin her night with shouting or drama, but I also wasn't going to stand by while Amelia rewrote reality in front of everyone. Not when I had the receipts to prove the truth. The speeches were scheduled for later, after dinner. Amelia had already prepared one. She loved being the star with a microphone. But what she didn't know was that I had quietly asked the host if I could speak too. I had phrased it carefully, making it sound like a tribute to Mom, which it was. But woven into my words would be the facts, undeniable and clear. Amelia could play the actress, but I was about to reveal the director. And the entire audience, family, friends, even Mom, would see exactly who made this night possible. Dinner passed in a blur. Guests clinked glasses, laughter bounced off the walls, and waiters floated between tables with trays of champagne. I sat near Mom, watching her eyes shine as relatives she hadn't seen in years came up to hug her. That was the part that mattered. The reason I had worked so hard to make this night happen. But every time someone leaned over to gush, "Amelia, you've really outdone yourself," I felt my jaw tighten. Amelia thrived on it, soaking in the compliments like sunlight, tossing her hair back and saying things like, "Well, you know me, I wanted everything perfect for Mom." She didn't mention the invoices, the deposits, the contracts signed in my name. She didn't mention that while she was posting selfies at brunch, I was driving across town to argue with the bakery about delivery times. And she certainly didn't mention the folder of receipts sitting quietly in my purse, heavy as stone, waiting for the right moment. When the music softened and the host announced it was time for speeches, Amelia shot me a smug glance before rising from her chair. She took the microphone with both hands, her sequined dress catching the light, and began her performance. "I just want to say," she said dramatically, "how much this night means to me. Mom, you've always been my inspiration, my strength, my guiding light. Everything you see here, every flower, every decoration. I did it for you, because you deserve the world." The room erupted in applause. Mom covered her mouth, her eyes welling with tears. I sat perfectly still, my pulse pounding in my ears. Amelia looked at me as she basked in the attention, her expression daring me to challenge her. And that was when the host, sticking to the schedule I had arranged, cleared his throat and said, "We also have another special tribute. Please welcome her other daughter to say a few words." My chair scraped softly against the floor as I stood. The air seemed to shift as people turned to look at me. Amelia froze, her knuckles tightening on the microphone. I walked slowly to the front, my heels clicking against the polished wood, my purse heavy against my side. I took the microphone, smiled gently at Mom, and said, "I'd like to share something with you all, because tonight isn't just about celebrating our mother, it's about telling the truth." The room quieted instantly. I could feel Amelia's glare burning into me, but I kept my eyes on Mom, steady and calm. "When we started planning this night," I began, my voice carrying clearly over the speakers, "I promised myself one thing, that Mom would feel truly honored, not just with words but with actions. And actions, as we all know, leave a trail." A few people chuckled lightly, not understanding where I was going yet. I reached into my purse and pulled out the folder. The faint sound of papers sliding against each other echoed in the silence. "This," I said, holding it up, "is the trail." I flipped it open, reading aloud just enough. "Invoice for venue deposit, signed under my name. Catering receipt, balance paid in full, my bank account. Floral arrangements, my order confirmation number. Cake, picked up under my contact information." Murmurs rippled through the room. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't accusing. I was simply reading facts, receipts lined with my handwriting. Then I looked at Mom, whose hands trembled slightly against her lap, tears still shimmering in her eyes. "Mom," I said softly, "I didn't do this for applause. I didn't do this to compete. I did it because you've given us everything, and you deserve one night that reflects even a fraction of that. I did it quietly, behind the scenes, because I wanted you to feel joy, not stress. But I also can't let the truth be erased." My voice wavered just enough to reveal the weight of years behind it. "Amelia wanted to give you words tonight. I wanted to give you reality." The hall was silent now, every eye bouncing between me and my sister. Amelia's face was pale, her smile cracked at the edges, but she still tried to force a laugh. "She's exaggerating. Don't listen." But I didn't need to argue. I simply held out the folder, offering it to Mom. "You can see for yourself." And in that instant, the balance of the room shifted. The applause that had been hers alone moments ago evaporated, leaving her exposed. The lies couldn't stand. In the face of paper and ink, the truth, quiet and undeniable, was finally in the light. Mom reached for the folder with trembling hands, and the sound of pages turning echoed louder than Amelia's shallow laugh. I watched Mom's expression change as she scanned the invoices. First confusion, then dawning realization, and finally the kind of hurt that cuts deeper than anger. She looked up at Amelia, her voice small but sharp. "You told me you were handling everything. You looked me in the eyes and swore." Amelia opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For once, the practiced excuses, the tearful manipulations she always leaned on, weren't fast enough to cover her. The guests shifted. In their seats, murmurs growing louder as the truth settled into the room like heavy dust. Cousins who had always praised Amelia glanced at me with new eyes. An aunt shook her head, muttering, "Unbelievable." And then, like fate had been waiting for the perfect moment, the event manager walked up to the front holding a clipboard. "Excuse me," he said, oblivious to the tension in the room. "I just need the final signature from the contract holder to close out tonight's balance." He turned directly to me. "You're the one on file, correct?" The silence that followed was devastating. Amelia's face drained of all color. She looked like she might faint, but instead she clutched the edge of the table, her sequins glittering under the lights like shards of glass. Mom's voice broke through the stillness. "So it was you. All of it." I swallowed hard, my throat tight, but I nodded. "Yes, Mom. And I'd do it again, because you deserve more than empty promises." That was when Amelia snapped, her voice cracking as she spat. "She's just trying to make me look bad. You know how she is. always desperate for attention. But the words rang hollow. Everyone had just seen the receipts. Everyone had just heard the manager call my name. There was no lie she could spin strong enough to undo the evidence in Mom's hands. Mom stood slowly, her eyes locked on Amelia with a mixture of sorrow and steel I had never seen in her before. "You used me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "And you tried to erase your sister. On my birthday." Gasps rippled across the tables. Amelia's mouth opened and closed like a drowning fish, but the crowd had already turned. The applause this time wasn't thunderous. It was quiet, deliberate, a wave of people clapping as their eyes shifted toward me. Not because I wanted it, not because I asked for it, but because truth has a way of demanding recognition. Amelia crumpled back into her chair, humiliated, while Mom walked to me, tears streaming down her face, and wrapped me in a hug so fierce it felt like it might break me in two. "You," she whispered into my ear, "are the daughter who saved me tonight." I held Mom close, feeling the years of quiet sacrifices suddenly crash over me like a tide. For so long, I had carried the weight in silence, paying off Amelia's debts, smoothing over her chaos, keeping the peace so Mom wouldn't have to see the cracks in her perfect daughter. And now, under the glow of the string lights, everyone saw what I had always known. Amelia's crown was made of paper, and the glue had finally melted away. Mom pulled back, her hands still gripping my arms, her eyes searching my face as if she were seeing me clearly for the first time. "I didn't know," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I should have known, but I didn't. You've done so much for me, for all of us." I swallowed hard, forcing down the years of resentment that wanted to spill out. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about finally being acknowledged, finally being seen. "You don't have to apologize, Mom," I said softly, though my voice shook. I just couldn't let her erase me again. Around us, the guests shifted uncomfortably, their attention drawn to Amelia. She sat stiff in her chair, face flushed, jaw clenched, but the mask had slipped. No amount of charm could cover the truth now. Her friends avoided her eyes. An uncle muttered something about, "always knew she was full of it." And then, like a final twist of fate, the caterer approached our table with a clipboard in hand. "Excuse me," he said politely, addressing me directly. "We'll need the remaining balance by the end of the night. Do you want to settle now or later?" All eyes turned. Amelia's face contorted, her mouth opening as if she might object, but she knew she couldn't. Not after the evidence already laid out. Not with the manager and caterer both confirming what I had said. My hand slipped into my purse, pulling out the envelope of cash I had prepared. I passed it to the caterer without a word, my movements steady, deliberate. A hush fell over the room as he nodded and walked away, leaving Amelia exposed in a silence she couldn't escape. The humiliation was complete, not by my anger, but by her own collapse under the weight of her lies. Mom squeezed my hand, her voice steady now. "Tonight is yours as much as mine." I shook my head, but deep down I knew this was the first time in my life I had truly won. The night didn't end with shouting or chaos. It ended with a kind of clarity that couldn't be undone. After the caterer walked away, guests started, approaching me one by one, quietly, almost sheepishly. An aunt slipped her arm through mine and whispered, "We always thought Amelia had it together, but now we see. You're the one who's been holding this family up." A cousin leaned across the table and murmured, "I had no idea, but it makes sense now. You've always been the steady one." Each comment was like a small balm on wounds I'd carried for years, invisible scars no one had acknowledged until tonight. Amelia, on the other hand, sat frozen, trapped in the very spotlight she had craved. The sequins on her dress no longer glittered. They looked garish, desperate. She tried to laugh it off at first, clapping her hands and saying, "Well, what?" Matters is that Mom had fun, right? But no one joined in. The silence that followed was worse than booze. It was indifference. Her performance had collapsed, and there was nothing left for her to hide behind. Mom stayed at my side for the rest of the evening, almost protective, introducing me to guests as if I were the one being honored. "This is my rock," she told a family friend, her hand on my shoulder. "She's the reason we're all here. Tonight." I didn't gloat, didn't rub it in. I just smiled, nodded, and let the truth do the speaking. By the time the cake was served, Amelia had slipped out of the room, unable to endure the weight of eyes that no longer adored her. For the first time, I didn't chase her, didn't beg her to come back, didn't try to fix what she had broken. I stayed where I belonged, beside Mom, basking in her laughter, in her joy, in the justice of being finally, undeniably seen. That was my quiet revenge. Not revenge through destruction, but through revelation. Amelia had tried to erase me. Instead, she erased herself. Later that night, after the guests had gone and the hall had emptied, I helped Mom gather her gifts and bouquet of roses. She was tired but glowing, her eyes still damp from everything that had happened. We sat together, for a moment in the quiet, the soft music fading as the staff began clearing tables. "I feel like I've been blind for years," Mom said, her voice low. "I wanted to believe the best in Amelia. I wanted to believe she could change. But tonight..." Her words trailed off, heavy with disappointment. I reached over, squeezing her hand. "You don't have to blame yourself. You were trying to see the good in her. That's not a flaw, Mom. But I couldn't keep letting her erase me. Not anymore." She nodded slowly, her fingers tightening around mine. "You've always been the one I could rely on. I should have said it more." That sentence, so simple, felt like a door unlocking in my chest. Years of unspoken resentment, of being overlooked, of being cast as the background player while Amelia took center stage. All of it loosened in that moment. For the first time, I felt truly seen by the one person whose acknowledgement mattered most. Outside in the parking lot, Amelia's car was still there. She was sitting in the driver's seat, staring at the steering wheel, her face pale in the eye glow of the dashboard. For a second, I considered walking over, maybe even comforting her out of habit. But I stopped myself. This wasn't mine to fix anymore. She had built her own collapse, brick by brick, and I wasn't going to rebuild it for her. I walked past without a word, unlocking my own car with steady hands. Mom leaned into me as we loaded the gifts into the trunk, her voice gentle but firm. "Don't ever let anyone silence you again." I nodded, the night air cool against my skin, the truth of her words settling deep into me. Amelia had tried to banish me from my own mother's birthday, to erase my role entirely. Instead, she had exposed herself, and I, quietly, calmly, had finally stepped out of the shadows. The days that followed were like watching the ripple of a stone dropped into still water. Word spread quickly through the family, faster than I expected. Cousins called, not to gossip, but to quietly apologize for believing Amelia's stories all these years. One even admitted, "She always made it sound like you were cold, too practical. Now I see you were the one carrying everything." It was strange, almost surreal, to hear those words after so many years of silence. Meanwhile, Amelia's silence was louder than any apology. She didn't call, didn't text, didn't even try to spin a new version of events. For once, she had nothing left to say. The group chat she once dominated fell quiet, her emojis and dramatic updates gone. And when Mom added a heartfelt message thanking me for making her birthday unforgettable, the thread filled with clapping hands and heart emojis, directed at me, not her. That shift was subtle, but permanent. Mom, too, had changed. She called me almost every day, sometimes just to say good morning or to ask how my day was going. There was a new softness in her voice, a gratitude that hadn't been there before. One afternoon, she said quietly, I used to think keeping peace meant keeping quiet. But peace built on lies isn't peace at all. You taught me that. I felt my throat tighten, because that was the lesson I had waited my whole life for her to see. Amelia, meanwhile, stayed on the edges, humiliated but unrepentant. She had always been good at waiting for things to blow over, but this time it didn't. People remembered the silence in that hall, the receipts, the way she couldn't answer when faced with proof. The image of her smirk cracking under the weight of truth became the story whispered in corners of family gatherings. And I didn't need to retell it. I just kept living, quietly, steadily, no longer invisible. The revenge wasn't in destroying her. It was in reclaiming myself. For the first time, I wasn't the fixer in the shadows. I was the woman who had pulled the strings and then cut them free. And the world, at last, was forced to see me for who I truly was. Weeks later, the party was still the only thing anyone in the family could talk about. At Sunday dinner, my uncle raised his glass to me, not Amelia, and said, "To the daughter who knows how to show up." The table clinked in unison, and I caught Mom's smile across the room, warm and unwavering. Amelia sat 2 chairs down, silent, picking at her food with a fork, her usual flair for attention completely stripped away. She tried once to make a joke about how, at least the dress looked great, but the chuckle died in her throat when no one laughed. It was like she had been dethroned in real time, and she didn't know how to live without the crown. For me, though, something deeper had shifted. I wasn't just the reliable one anymore. I was finally the daughter acknowledged, the woman recognized for her worth. The folder of receipts still sat on my dresser at home, untouched since that night. I didn't need to look at them again. They had already done their job. They had broken the illusion, and once illusions break, they don't rebuild the same way. One evening, Mom came over with a box in her arms. Inside were photo albums, recipes, little things from our childhood. "I want you to have these," she said, her voice quiet but resolute. "You've earned the right to carry on the heart of this family, not because of what you paid for, but because of who you are." I didn't cry right away. I just sat there, running my fingers over the worn covers of the albums, the edges frayed from years of turning pages. It hit me then. My revenge hadn't just exposed Amelia. It had rewritten my place in this family forever. Amelia had told me not to come, to stay invisible. Instead, I had arrived, and for the first time in my life, no one could look past me. The silence of that truth was louder than any outburst, and it would echo for years. It was around that time that Amelia finally broke her silence. She showed up at my apartment one evening, unannounced, her makeup smudged and her eyes red like she hadn't slept in days. She stood in the doorway, shifting her weight, clutching her purse like it was a lifeline. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she sighed and muttered, "You embarrassed me. You didn't have to do it like that." I leaned against the frame, my arms crossed. "You told me not to come to Mom's birthday. You tried to erase me. What exactly did you expect me to do? Applaud from the shadows while you took credit? For everything I built?" She flinched, her eyes darting away. I wanted to be the one for once. I wanted Mom to look at me the way she looks at you now." Her voice cracked on the last word, and for a second I almost felt pity. Almost. But then I remembered every late night I'd spent bailing her out, every lie she'd spun at my expense, every moment she had pushed me into invisibility. "You didn't want to be the one, Amelia," I said quietly. "You wanted to look like the one. There's a difference, and you've been chasing the look your whole life." She swallowed hard, tears welling, but I didn't let her interruption. "Come. I'm done carrying you. I'm done fixing your messes. And if you think what happened at that party was about embarrassing you, you still don't get it. It wasn't about you at all. It was about Mom, and about me finally refusing to be erased." Silence hung heavy between us. the weight of years, pressing down. Finally, Amelia turned, muttering something about me being cruel, and walked away. I didn't chase her, not this time. I closed the door softly, locking it with steady hands. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty for choosing myself. I didn't feel like the fixer, the shadow, the one left behind. I felt solid, seen, whole. And as I leaned back against the door, exhaling the last of my anger, I knew this was more than a victory. It was a turning point. My sister's words would never cage me again. Months passed, and the story of that night became a quiet legend in our family, not because I retold it, I didn't need to, but because people remembered the silence that fell when the truth came out. The way Amelia's smile cracked under the weight of receipts. The way Mom's arms wrapped around me as though she had finally recognized what had always been there. Every gathering after that felt different. Relatives who once brushed me off as the responsible one now came to me first, asking for advice, offering respect that had never been there before. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about finally being seen as someone who mattered. Amelia, meanwhile, grew smaller. At family dinners, she lingered in corners, her once booming laugh reduced to a strained chuckle no one bothered to echo. When she tried to retell stories where she was the hero, people's eyes slid away, their patience thin. She had burned through her currency, and she knew it. For me, though, something lighter had taken root. I no longer felt like I had to prove. My worth no longer carried the weight of keeping the peace at the expense of myself. When Mom handed me the old recipe book, her handwriting in faded ink across the pages, she said, "This is for the one who shows up." That sentence, more than anything, became my quiet victory. Amelia had said, "Don't come." She had tried to cut me out, erase me, bury me in silence. Instead, I had walked into that hall with my truth in hand. And I hadn't just been seen. I had stayed. And that, in the end, was the sweetest revenge of all. As autumn settled in, life began to arrange itself into a new rhythm. For the first time, I didn't flinch when the family group chat buzzed. I knew I wasn't the background character anymore. Mom called me more often than she ever had before, not just to ask for help, but to share her day, to ask my opinion, to simply say she loved me. It was such a small shift on the surface, but to me it felt monumental, like stepping out of a shadow I hadn't even realized was swallowing me whole for decades. Amelia, meanwhile, drifted further and further into her own silence. She still showed up at gatherings, but the room no longer revolved around her. She tried once or twice to recapture the spotlight, making grand announcements about new plans, but no one rallied around her like before. People listened politely and then turned the conversation back toward something else. Toward me, toward Mom, toward the real center of the family. That, more than anything, was the quiet justice I had longed for. It wasn't that I wanted Amelia destroyed, I wanted her exposed. And she was. Exposed for leaning on illusions while I had built something real. Exposed for thinking she could erase me without consequence. The receipts had been my weapon, yes, but what lingered was not the paperwork. It was the shift in perception, the clarity that could never be undone. One evening, as I sat with Mom in her kitchen, the two of us sipping tea while the wind rattled. The windows? She reached across the table and took my hand. "You know," she said softly, "for so long I thought keeping the peace meant pretending not to see. But you've taught me something. Sometimes peace only comes when the truth is spoken aloud." I met her eyes, and in that moment I knew the years of invisibility were over. I had been told not to come, not to show up, not to exist. And yet, by showing up anyway, I had claimed my place once and for all. Revenge hadn't been loud or cruel. It had been steady, undeniable, wrapped in the quiet strength of truth. And in the silence of that kitchen, with my mother's hand in mine, I realized I no longer needed to fight to be seen. I was already here. Winter arrived before I realized it, and with it came the first holiday season that felt different, lighter. The house smelled of cinnamon and pine, laughter bubbled through the living room, and for once I wasn't the one, stuck in the kitchen cleaning up while Amelia took the spotlight. This time it was Mom who pulled me into the center. Her arm looped proudly through mine as she told anyone who would listen. "This is my daughter, the one who shows up when it matters." The words weren't meant to cut Amelia, but they did. I saw it in the way she avoided eye contact, the way her wine glass trembled slightly in her hand. For years I had carried her reputation on my back, letting her play the golden child while I paid the price. Now the roles had flipped, not because I fought for it, but because the truth had finally been forced into the open. At one point, Amelia cornered me in the hallway, her voice low and sharp. "Do you feel good about yourself? About making me look like a fool?" I looked at her steadily, no anger left in me. "I didn't make you look like anything. You did, that all on your own. I just stopped hiding it for you." Her face crumpled, and for a split second I saw the little girl who had once been my sister before the lies, before the competition, before the endless games. But then she turned away, storming out into the cold night without saying goodbye. I didn't follow. For once, her chaos was hers alone to carry. Later that evening, after the guests had gone and the house was quiet, Mom and I sat together by the tree, the lights reflecting softly in her eyes. She rested her head on my shoulder and whispered, "You've given me more than a birthday. You've given me the truth. And that's the greatest gift I could ever receive." I held her hand, feeling the steady weight of her love at last, and realized I didn't need anything else. Not Amelia's approval, not the family's validation, not even recognition for the sacrifices I had made. I already had what mattered. I had stepped into the light and stayed there, no longer erased, no longer silent. Amelia had tried to tell me not to come, but I had come anyway, and in doing so, I had reclaimed myself. That was my revenge, not loud, not cruel, but lasting. And as I watched the snow fall softly outside, I knew one thing with certainty. This was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I no longer lived in my sister's shadow, but in my own rightful place.